Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make this wire wrapped heart design. So let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to start off with showing y'all two variations from what I'll be teaching here today. The variations that you can do on this design are infinite. The techniques here can be utilized for way more than just hearts too. So this was the first one that I had made, kind of prototyping out the piece, and it's made with 16 gauge bare copper and 28 gauge bare copper from parawire.com. So these are American wire gauges, but if you go to like Parawire and stuff, it'll be the same gauge. I'm not certain what it is in millimeters, but you could give it a Google and I'm sure that'll help you figure it out. And with this piece, I have the loose ends looped at the bottom to where it would be very cute, I think, to hang like a little teardrop or a charm, or just leave it bare like how I did here. And then we also have, this was the second prototype piece I had done, experimenting with, because a key design element in this piece is it's shoulder mounted. I don't know if that's actually the term for it, that's just what Randy and I call it. And this is where I actually just have 16 gauge jump rings looped through on the shoulders so that it attaches to a chain like kind of set in there, whereas on this piece we have it on a bail, so you could change out the chain. It kind of slides freely along the necklace, but this one, the loose ends are tied up in the bail, and this is much more like what I'm going to be teaching today. And this one is also made from 16 gauge in the 16 gauges in the titanium toned enameled silver plated wire from Parawire, and then I wrapped it again in 28 gauge. I really like the 28 gauge. You could use 26 or 24, but I like the 28 because it's easier on my fingers actually. So, but use what you like. You could actually go even thicker on the core wire, go up to a 14 gauge instead of a 16 gauge, and then use a 24 gauge, and that would really look like substantial. Like it can really blow my mind how different of a look you can get on the same basic design just by changing up the wire gauges. Now here on the bail though, I did use half round 18 gauge, but we won't be using that in today's tutorial. So, and this is what that stuff looks like, and I get it from Parawire as well. But for today, I'm going to be using 28 gauge in antique copper. This has the look of oxidized copper, but it will not turn your skin green, which I think is amazing. And then for our core, we're going to be using 16 gauge in the vintage bronze. I wanted just a little bit of contrast, and I actually really love these two color tones together. And so there's our wire. The tools that I'm using are, now there is some option here for, you could use like a pill bottle or a little bead organizer or a ring mandrel, if I can reach it without hitting the tripod. The squeaky chair. Okay. So you could use a ring mandrel, is what I'll be using, but you could use the handle of a spoon, like anything to kind of get the shaping and effect that you want. Round nose pliers, wire snips, bent or flat nose pliers, and I do always love having my stepped mandrel pliers on hand, but you could use a pen or a knitting needle or anything like that as well. Hammering is optional, but I actually find I have a much more difficult time doing the weaving on a piece that I've hammered, but because like this piece I went through and I hammered first to get a little bit of spread on the little spirals, but I did it on that entire piece, and in hindsight I would have rather just hammered on those and left the rest of it round, because you couldn't even really tell that I had hammered it at all after it was woven. So sometimes drawing stuff out can be helpful, and especially if you're trying something new, or maybe you wanted, instead of this being heart shaped, you wanted to make it leaf shaped, and you kind of want to figure out how you want to do that. Let me see, I keep shaking my tripod. Okay, so this is composed of two pieces. The first piece is a straight piece of wire that we bend at like 90 degrees, so we get this little V. which is the base of the heart. And then we cut the loose ends down to the same length and then shape them into our little spiral there. And that's the first piece. And so again, for this one, I would actually hammer there on the ends just to give it a little bit of like a little bit more substance and spread and shape. And the thicker of a core wire that you use, and if you hammer that, the wider your pieces will be able to spread. And so to do this piece, I started by taking another length of wire and folding it directly in half, and I'll show you guys how to do this. I just wanted to give you the game plan, and then we would get into it. That way, I don't want to just show you guys how to do what we're doing. I want you to be able to understand why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing, because that way, if you want to change something about it, you can kind of wander off the beaten path with a little bit more confidence and understanding as to why you're doing what you're doing. So that's our bend, and then we're gonna bring it around because I like to get a little bit of space. You know, the more space we give ourselves, the more we'll be able to show off our weaving in the piece. And then I make that little loop. I'm going to leave it open there, that way I can tell where the wire came from. And then here on the other side, around and down and like that. So again, I am drawing it kind of weird just so that, you know, ideally maybe even using a different pen color would have been a good idea. But really, I just made them to where they'd stack on top of each other. So that's an idea. And on this one, I started my weaving from up here in the center and then worked my way weaving in a figure 8 weave all the way around until I bounded off on the end and made the loop. But we're going to be doing it in this method today to show how to do the bail. Because sometimes, I know for the longest time for me, whenever I was making a piece of jewelry, it was like I could do the whole piece until I got to the very end, and especially if it was a piece that had more than 1 or 2 core wires, and I'd be so happy with the whole rest of the piece, but then I'd have all these loose ends of wire that I'm like, I don't even know how to begin tidying this up. So, that's why I'm going to show you guys how to make the bail, is because that might be something helpful for some of your other wire wrapping projects as well. So again, for this one, we start with our length of wire and we bend it at a 90 degree, and we're going to make our little heart shape like that. And you could make yours less curlicued, like you could have yours stop like here and just hammer it to paddle it out and make something a little bit more, I don't know, less spirally. I actually really like that. But we're going to do the spiral today, but I'm going to have to try that. And then we are going to bend a second piece of wire at the same angle. Even though I'm drawing it as offset, they will actually be stacked on top of each other as much as possible. So that's one piece of wire. And now it is going to come up and around and come there to the middle, and this one's going to come up and around and there to the middle, and now both of these will get bent at a 90 degree up towards the back. And I will be showing you guys how to do this, but it's going to get bent upward and then bent upward. Now at this point on this one, I had already woven the bail, and that was a huge mistake. Well, not huge, like it was just inconvenient because I then had to like weave through everything and I couldn't just weave around the loose ends. So we're going to do the bail last. So we get to here, we start our weaving down here at the bottom and then do a figure 8 weave all the way up until we get to like there, on both sides. And then I added in this little faceted amethyst briolet, and continue down a little bit farther. You could or couldn't, like you don't have to put a bead there. Kind of wondering if we should. I don't know, we'll decide as we go. And then I actually splice in a fresh wire for the bail, because there's so many different bail options that you can do. You could do a half round wrap like this one. You could do another figure 8 bail if you wanted. You could just twist the wires together. But I'm going to show you guys how to do a very similar bail to this one here that we actually covered in, at the time of recording, a recent tutorial, but it might be worth readdressing. So I'm going to snip off. I always try to give myself a little bit more wire than what I need, just in case, but this is about 6 inches, and this will be the smaller heart in the center. And then I'm going to snip off about 9 inches, and this will be for the larger, I hope that'll be enough. Probably should have gone with 10 or 12, just in case, depending on what style of bail you wanted to make. But again, Parawire is so affordable that go ahead and give yourself a little bit extra. That way, gives you a little bit of wiggle room, figure out what you want to do. And now I am going to grab, if I had to, in a perfect world, I get to use both my flat and bent nose pliers, but if I had to choose one or over the other for this project, I would end up going with my flat nose, just because these guys we had actually taken to our grinder and made a really fine tip. Like, we kind of removed some of the material on our, it's not a grinder, it's a belt sander, but it worked. And it made a very narrow point there, and that comes in handy later on. So I just have a ruler on the edge of my table. I'm aware I'm off screen, but it's easier than moving the tripod. So just use a ruler or your eyeballs and find the center of your wire. And now I offset just a hair to the side of where I want it to bend, because the wire doesn't bend directly. Like, if right there is our center line, I'd actually want to scooch over just a little bit more. That way it would actually bend where I want it to. So do you see how the tip actually ended up being bent? Oh, is the autofocus going to be a butthole the whole time? I think so. Let me kind of strategically scooch stuff off of my table. But yeah, so there we've got our 90-degree bend, and we can come through on the other side and just make sure that it's nice and concise. And now I'm going to go through and do that same thing on this side. And if there's a little bit of curve to my wire, give me just a Okay, sorry, I was messing with my autofocus. Future Ron, please edit that out. Oh my gosh, #professional. If there's a bit of a curve in my wire, I will try to do my bend against the curve. I just feel like it gives me like a crispier effect. Could be entirely in my head, but that'll be fine. So there is how that wire came out. And now you can see we could stack them together. The angle's not exactly the same. Ooh, I actually really like that with it being offset a little bit. Do you guys want to do it like that? I don't know. Oh, we're going to stick to the kind of easier version, like the less variations. But I just, truly, y'all, to get that kind of stacked effect, I just have, if this one's a 90-degree bend, this one's more like an 80-degree. And so it offsets it just a little bit, but we'll go ahead and open it up some. That way they'll stack cleanly, hopefully, on top of each other for whenever we get into our weaving. But I do want to try one with it being kind of like offset like that. But yeah, I want to start by just teaching y'all the basic design, and then we can get wild with it. So now I'm going to come through with my ring mandrel, and I'm going to be using around the size 10 right there. Or you could use something of comparable, and that's significantly thicker, but depending on the size of mandrels that you have on hand, could really affect how your heart comes out, which is a great way of, kind of putting a twist on it. So, whoops, coming in about an inch from our bend is where we're making contact with the mandrel. And now I'm just going to bend this around, making that kind of teardrop shape. And I'm going to come in on the other side, again, at around this, at the size 10, about an inch in from the bend in the wire. Oops, don't mean to hit the tripod. This is just a kind of awkward angle. And I'm just going to bring that around. And so this is how I get the humps on my heart to be about the same size. And this is also an excellent opportunity to make sure that my center wires are the same length. So I'm going to come through and give a little snip and a snip. Okay. And so now from here, I am going to grip as close to the tip of my pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And I do recommend practicing making some spirals first. But I'm just, whoops, sliding off the end there. That's fine. If that keeps happening, just come in a little bit. That's all right. Because with this 16 gauge, it can be kind of difficult to bend as we get into it. But I'm just grasping and providing support from the back for our spiral. And that keeps me making the spiral in a very two-dimensional way, because I want it to stay flat, like it's drawn on paper, not building outwards yet. But it's your heart, you do you. This one actually seems like it's going to come out a little bit smaller. I should have gone with 8 inches instead of 6, but meh. We'll figure it out. Okay. So there we have our heart. And you can see that side's all like, they're not symmetrical. Oh boy. Oh no. That's fine. We've got this. Okay, so I'm closing that loop. Now you can see on this loop I got a really nice like little rounded effect. And that's because I kept slipping off the end and actually pinched the wire, whereas on this side there's a little bit more of a straighter piece. I don't really know of a way other than undoing it to go back and fix that. I could trim just a little bit off. I hate to make them not the same length. But let's see how that happens. And so if your loops come out like that and you want it to be the other way, you can wander out of frame. Snip off the straighter part and then come in and curve it down a little bit. I'm trying very hard to be firm with this, but not squeezing it to the point that it's biting into my wire. Because this is still a pretty soft copper wire, so no, trying to get them to look like, yeah, sisters not twins, we'll deal with it. And I'm just gripping it by the loop and curving it in a bit. If it's helpful to you, you could draw out a heart on graph paper and make it just as perfectly symmetrical as what makes you happy, and then compare this over the heart on your paper. I'm not worried about it. So now we are going to, you can kind of see here, oh, it's still offset and I still love it. Oh, you're killing me. I am going to have to do that on the next one. So I'm just going to take this and open it up just a little bit more. There we are. Yeah, I want them to sit very happily, very comfortably on top of each other, the two pieces. So now I'm going to come out and do on like a size 13. Still going to come in to where it's only an inch between where the bend in the wire is and where the wire is making contact to the mandrel, maybe an inch and a half. Just whatever it is, I just want to be consistent. And then I'm bending this around like that. I'm going to remove from my mandrel, coming back on the other side, making contact to the 13 or size 13. Oops, hitting the tripod and coming around down. There we are. And so again, from here, we can try to make sure that our wires... harumph. Oh, also, I kind of did a boo-boo. I needed both of these on the same side instead of it being like sandwiched. So when that happens, I'm just going to open it up a bit, flip it around to the back, and bring it on back down and pretend like it never happened. So, now from here, we can hold them in place. If you want a more exaggerated space between your two layers, you could go with a smaller or larger, like just if you want that gap larger, go with a larger difference between, instead of doing a size 10 and a size 13 on a ring mandrel, you could do like a size 8 and a size 14, like, and that will give you a much bigger gap. I personally am very happy with this ratio, because it also, the wider that gap is, the more wire you're going to be using up on your piece, and the more exaggerated any imperfections can tend to be. Because on this style of weave, the straighter and nicer your wire is, like no bends and stuff in it, the crispier, like it's gonna look sharp, y'all. But if you have a lot of like bends and stuff, that can really become very apparent if that gap is wider. Like, I'm pretty proud of, I mean, it's not perfect, but I'm like, I did good on that one. Like, I did my best, and I'm like, good job, Vaughn. If I had done this with a wider gap, it would look so much, I'd be like, oh gosh, I didn't keep even like any indiscrepancies in tension or wire clarity, like anything like that, get really exaggerated the wider the gap is. I really hope that that makes sense. So now from here, I am going to do that bend in our wire, because I'd like to see where the center that comes down is going to be in relation to our spirals. So now I'd like that to be like right here, I think. So I'm just gripping firmly. I really don't want my pliers to slip, so I'm not riding too close to the tip. But I am just going to bend up as much as I can on the tip of my pliers, which this is where having thin tips on your pliers can really come in handy. Oh goodness, I've done it again. It would have been better for me to not have entrapped that wire there, but I'm sure that could be used as a design element. And if you end up having to kind of just make it all kind of boogered up, we're just going to slide right back onto our ring mandrel and shape that around again. Parawire, very forgiving. Very, very forgiving. So now on this side, I am going to grip my wire with my pliers, trying to line up the where the bends are going to be, and then folding that. Okay, now we could technically leave this like this, but if we come in and use our pliers this way, let me see if this will help. If we come in and use our pliers to smush this closure sideways, like that, it just gives us a much tighter bend. And I personally prefer that. Now, sometimes, you know, your wire will twist. That's okay. Just come in and do it again. And if it twists, you can just straighten it back up. So now from here, I am going to end up trimming these ends so that there's the same length, but I'm not worrying about that yet, just in case something comes up. So I'm going to take this and bonk, kind of open her up a little bit. Oh, I love that shape. Little hearts. Okay, and so now from here, we can begin doing our weaving. And I've opened this up more than what the final design may look like because I want to make it just a little bit easier on ourselves to weave. So now, coming in with the 28 gauge in the antique copper color, I am going to pull off like 3.5 arm lengths, so about 15 to 16 feet. I don't know, I'm like 5'4", so it's one arm span, about like 5 feet. So there's one arm span, two arm span, I think three should do us. Keep watching the video though, because I may end up like future Vaughn edit in right here if it's a different. I give up. Vaughn's not gonna edit it. Future Vaughn is totally unreliable, and past Vaughn is just disappointed. Okay, so I have found the center of my wire by kind of just lining the ends up and then finding the middle. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to offset just a little bit from dead center. Oof, my thumb's bothering me. Don't forget, if you're doing this, do like your hand stretches and stuff. If your hands start cramping up, have mercy on yourself. So I'm going to come through and just do, and see how I'm cutting through the middle here. Whenever I had made the bail, I had to take this and like press and like pull through the whole length of the wire. It is so much easier to just boom through the middle. Boom through the middle. Oh my gosh. After making 2 hearts, it took me to be like, dude, stop making the bail first. So much easier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 wraps on this side. And I'm just trying to keep very tidy with my wraps. I'm going to zoom in and do the other side. So just kind of off screen, the wire that's coming off of this side is entirely on the left side of my body, and the wire that's on the right side I keep entirely on my right side of the body, because if I have them both going down the middle, they just tangle around each other, which is maddening. This is still maddening. Fortunately, the cat's asleep. I don't want to talk too loud though, because she'll hear me. If you speak her name, she will come. And so to keep our weaving, right now we're just doing the wrapping, just kind of securing into place. But the more snug I can keep these wires right up next to each other, the better. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm maintaining tension as I come around. And I think that helps tremendously. Like I'm tugging and then pressing, and that's just keeping all that tension right where I want it to be. Again, pulling my wires off to the side and then off to the side. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and use my flat nose pliers to just give it a smush. So I know I had said I'd wanted them to be on top of each other. Side by side is acceptable as well. Like, especially if we did that kind of little bit of offset. Ooh, that would have looked so cool. If you'd like to see pictures of the other hearts that I'll be making as variations from this design, be sure to follow us on like Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and all that good stuff. And also, if you'd like to share your variations and artwork of this design, you can tag us, you can post it on our walls. Just let us know. We love seeing what you guys make. So from here, you can see there's this little bit of gap. Please pardon my pristine manicure. These are working hands, y'all. If you don't like my manicure, buy me a new one. is how I feel every time somebody's like, oh my god, do your nails. I'm like, oh my god, you do my nails. I'm tired. So I'm just gonna come in and wrap once around, and because we were wrapping both of them side by side, it makes for a really tight gap here. So we can open that up a little bit just by lifting. Will let us push that wire in, and then we can settle it back down, and it lets it kind of be in its space. And this is also going to give us a really cool, already it's offset into a three-dimensional kind of way. So there's 1 and 2, and again, by leaving the bail open, we're actually able to just come through here. And so we've wrapped twice, and then we're going to figure 8 weave around. This is a pretty common wire wrapping technique. And then we're going to wrap twice around this side. So see, if we were to wrap around that way, how the wire, hopefully it'll pick up, is wrapped around on top. That's not what we're doing here. We'll do that later. We want to wrap this to where it then weaves back around the back side, you know, like a figure 8. So just for demonstration purposes, if from the side view, if this is a wire and this is a wire, so like this is the end of that wire and this is the end of that wire, our wire's going to be, our weaving wire is snaking around in this manner. So we go around once and then twice and then come through and then once, twice. You could come around a third time, but it's just the core of it, even if you just did a single beat figure 8, you're just doing this motion around. Now, that's what a single beat would look like. What I'm doing here, I call a double beat because it's got 2, and then it crosses over and does 2, and then crosses over and does 2, and we'll actually get up to the point to where here on the side, to accommodate this expansion, we're going to keep being consistent with the 2 beats on this side, but it's going to get to a point to where we're doing 2 and then 3 and then 2 and then 3 and then 2 and then 4. And I don't go wider than 4 on this one because it can get a little bit too open on the gaps. I actually alternate like 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4. But as we get there, I'll show you guys kind of how I gauge it, and because I just make it up, you guys. Like, there's no like formula or specific way that I follow each time. I just do what I think looks good at the moment, and you might find something that works perfect for you, or you might find something that you hate. You never know till you try. Experimentation keeps life spicy. So we are going to come around and do 1. And again, I'm making sure that I go under that wire. And then I'm just sneaking through. Boop. Oh no, I am snagged. That is okay. There's our second. And then I'm just gonna, there's 1. So I don't know if I'd recommend this for the very first wire weaving project, but maybe like your second or third or fifth or something. So there's that 2 beat weave. You can kind of see taking shape, hopefully. And there's 1. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually just guiding the wire behind that front heart and then over the bail and bringing it down. So there's 2. And then I'm just hooking this up and over. And this is making the 3rd. So this is already a pretty long tutorial. Oh boy. Which, if you're hanging out, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I do hope this is helpful to you. if you have any questions, whether you're watching live in the premiere, hey guys, or if you're watching this at some point in the future, leave a comment down below. Hopefully I'll be able to get back to you as soon as I can. If not, our community here on YouTube, not to brag, is the best. Y'all are the greatest, and y'all are so helpful to each other and supportive and like so great at answering each other's questions. So if the question hasn't if the question hasn't already been asked down in the comments, I'm sure if you ask something, somebody will have something helpful to say. And I do try to go through and keep up with comments, especially in like the first week after the video's been posted. But you never know. You can also email us at backtoearthcreations@yahoo.com if you have specific questions, and those I do reply to more consistently. I try my best, y'all. But I am going to put this into time lapse. No, I'm just gonna, through the magic of editing, I'm gonna come back when we have 10 beats on this side and 10 beats on this side. Y'all, I'm gonna be doing it just like how I just showed you. We'll do it time lapse because I don't want to miss a thing. Something that might seem obvious to me might be like to a beginner is like, whoa, what did you do there? So time lapse it is. Well, that didn't take very long before I was like, oh, a tip. It smoosh as you go. Like, get a bit of weaving done, smush. Like, oftentimes I'll do one side and then the other, and then smush, one side and then the other, and then smush. It just keeps everything very nice and tidy. And the more you do that, the more kind of compacted your weaving will become. And I think it just looks sharp. But if you do a whole bunch and then smush it down, you may not get as even and tidy of a weave. So, yay, back to weaving. Okay, so we have gotten 10 repetitions, and I'm trying to be accommodating of the diverging of our wires from where they're almost connected to where they're split quite apart. And so I don't want to force it to be together too much because then we won't get a steady gradients, like a gradual splitting. It'll be more like bonk, like a Y instead of a V, and I'm going for a V on this one. But we've done 10 repetitions on this side, and I found the I can't call it the key to symmetry because I still somehow mess it up every single time, but something that really helps me to be more symmetrical than I would have been, maybe, is to do a step on one side and then to immediately go and do that same step on the other side. So I'm going to at least, like how we did 10 on here, then 10 on there, I'm going to do 10 figure 8 2 beats on this side and then this side. So that's what's up. Okay, so we finished on the inside heart on this side, so I want to finish on the inside heart on this side. So there's one, hooking around and through. There's one and two. And I just try to finish with my wire traveling off in the same direction on both sides. Again, it just helps me to stay hopefully symmetrical. And yeah, I feel like that's pretty good. So now from here, I'm going to begin, again, kind of orienting my heart the other way. And I am going to begin, I'm going to do maybe 4 or 5 2 beats. So let's go ahead and do that. So that was 10, so we're going to bring it up to 15. So there's 1 on both sides. There's 2 on one, 2 on 2. And the good news about this design is it's kind of just the same thing over and over and over and over again. So you certainly get some practice in. There's 3. Again, just trying to snag this around the back side. There we are. 3, 3, 4. Yeah. It's not, because you can kind of gauge for yourself, where does it stop being in line across? Because as soon as it stops being in line, that is where you want to start widening on this side. That way the line can continue. Because otherwise, if we just kept this up the whole way, the line, instead of being straight across, would start being to where we're connecting here and here. Like it would be quite slanted. And I want to get that almost radiant point from the center of each heart all the way around, and because it makes it look like, wow, radiant. You know, because sound effects. Oh my gosh, I wish I were a more eloquent person sometimes, but I wouldn't know what to do with it myself. Okay, so here you can see it's already starting to be a little further back on this side. So I think that was 4 or 5. I'm sorry, I lost count. But we're gonna go, there's 1. And if you had joined up here at the top, what that looks like is, like, if we couldn't access through this point, is I just push my wire through, hook my finger, and then just try to carefully pull all that wire through, almost like you're sewing with a needle and thread by hand. So yeah, that's way more labor intensive, I feel like. But if you find yourself in that position, that's how I do it, which is just one way. So we did 3 on that side, and then 1, 2, and then 1, 2, and whoops, didn't quite make it. 3, 1, 2. Also, the distribution of 3 and 4 beat weaves around here on the outer edge might be different if you're using a 24 gauge wire, or something other than a 28, or even a 30 gauge wire. You may need to do maybe 4 and 5 beat separations. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, and I think that's my third set of 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There's my fourth set of 3. In today's episode of Can Von Count, as long as it's under 10, yeah, mostly. Oh no, I've lost count. Crap. Oh, well, there goes that episode. But you can see here maybe how we get just a little bit wider of a spacing than what we did down here. Just a little bit more air coming through. So I'm blind, so let's see if I can use the camera to count. So I'm going to count on this side. So that's 1, 2, 3, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is our 5th, maybe. Because, I don't know, 5 is a nice round number, right? Like, so I did 5 of the 2 beat and then I've done 5 of the 2-3, like the 2-3 expansion. So now I'm going to do that same thing over here on the other side. And if you're watching this tutorial and I'm going excruciatingly slow, please feel free to kind of jump ahead, or YouTube has this great feature where you can put it into 2 times speed, but my heart is always with the beginners, because just sometimes stuff that seems obvious to folks who've been working with wire for decades is like just I would have never thought of that like as a beginner. So I try to leave in every excruciating step, so to hopefully help y'all as much as possible, because I have buggered up a lot of pieces. Like, they were so bad you had to bury them in the backyard and salt the bones kind of stuff. So if I can help y'all out through my mistakes and the things I've learned, then yay. So going back into time lapse, gonna do 5 and 5 on this side, 5 just 2B and 5 with the 2-3 expansion. Oh no. Okay, so I just flipped it over and I saw, I had messed up. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. So the way that I go back and fix stuff is I cry while I rip out stitches. It's, ugh, you just do the same thing you just did, but backwards and with more sad. So here we go. But fortunately, Parawire is a soft enough wire that you can kind of get away with doing this. If I mess up and then do it and mess up again, I leave it in. I don't want to risk breaking my wire. Oh, I'm so glad I'd flipped it over to see, though. Because especially on a piece like this that's basically showcasing, oh, look at how nice and even my stitches are. And then I go in and start throwing in some wacky, not even stitches. It's like, oh, Vaughn, what have you done? Oh boy. But this goes by surprisingly quick. It's okay. Sometimes it unwraps faster than it went on. Oh no, and then I've tangled it up even farther. Oh boy. There we are. Maybe. Because it's at this point that the wire's getting a little bit stiffer. It's less supple. How many ways can I say the same thing in different ways? How many cinnamon rolls? Okay. So now we've gotten to fixing. That one was crossed all the way over. So I'm just going to bring it down and cool, right back at it. Except for I also didn't keep track of how many stitches that was. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I only need to do 4 more. Okay, so I'm gonna do the 4 and then 5 more and then the 5 with the expansion. So that's just, I just run my fingers over it and go again. Fortunately, this happened where it's a tight weave. If this happened farther up where it's wider, I'd have been a little bit more upset about it. But these things happen, and that's okay. Be patient with yourself, be patient with the piece. You've got this. So we've gotten, that weave going, and it's back up to the other side. And now I'm gonna rotate this back around. Make sure I'm not kinking my wire, because at this point, even the full length of the wire over here that we haven't really worked with yet is still starting to get just a tad work hardened. So, and that's also why I don't use bobbins and things like that, is because I never know when something might go haywire and I'm going to need to like kind of hand stitch through something. And I feel like I would rather not have work hardened my wire by pulling it off the spool and then re-spooling it. I just have it kind of hang loose, but that does come with occupational hazards of getting tangled on everything, enraging felines, and just general mayhem. So you pick your battle. Basically, choose your fighter. So now I've done the 5 reps of 2 and an expansion of 3. So 2 beats, 3 beats. And now we've done 2 beats, and I'm going to go through and do 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then there's our 4th, and I'm going to swing around and go 1 and 2. And we could, and you can see again how much it opens up in contrast to the others. So again, you don't want to don't jump just from doing 2 to doing 4, because that might be an irregular gap, but also you can utilize these gaps. Like we could go from 2 3 4 3 2 3 4, and it would do like a kind of almost woven inlay, which can be really cool, but it's such a fine detail that a lot of folks just may not even notice. But y'all, the magic happens in the details. Why not? Why not do the thing? Because even if nobody else appreciates it, like if you put your piece out for sale and people are like, oh, that's pretty, and you point it out and they're like, oh my god, I didn't even notice. Do it for you. So there's 1, 2, 3. I'm actually going to try that on this piece just to see how it comes out. Excuse me. I've been chattering nonstop with no water. Excuse me. Alrighty, had a sip of coffee. It's got water in it. That's fair. The hot bean juice. And there's 1, 2. So how many did we do on that? We did 4 and then 3. So now we're going to come in and do 1, whoops, and 2. And then we're going to come around town and do 1 and 2. Then we're going to go 1, 2, and 3. This is so much fun. I'm having fun at least, so there's that. And then 1 and 2, and then what were we on? Okay, this is our 4 one. Ooh, I can't wait to see how this looks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then figure 8ing around to do our 1 and 2. And then 1, 2, 3. Then 1, 2, 1, whoops, 2, 3. Wait, what did... No, that one should have just been a 2, right? Yes, that one was supposed to just be a 2. So if that happens, which that's okay, you just undo it, and I just kind of rub the wire with my fingernail, burnish out that crease, and then be careful because that does work hard in it. But then I go 1, 2, and then 2 on this side. 1, 2. Let's look at that. Okay, so it's not really very obvious, but it makes me happy. So, and this also can be utilized with, if you have an eye for it, if you wanted to do like a bead edging, you could then, the way that we do the bead edging is, like, let's say you've woven all the way around and you want to start weaving on some seed beads, you could thread them onto your wire and then come through the 4, like the larger hole from the 4. That is also would be a good spot farther up here if you weren't doing a bail to do a shoulder mount connection. Whoops. Almost you got a kink in my wire. If you can catch them before they actually kink and just undo the loops, that's preferable, because it puts less of that brittle point on your wire. Now this is kind of building it very gradually, which I kind of like, but I think I am going to go back to just alternating 3 and 4. So that was 2. So I'm gonna do, I don't know, should I? I'm gonna commit to it and keep doing it this way. So it's 2. So there's, and I'm going to pop this just into a time lapse, and because I've already forgotten what I was doing down here, but I'm going to just build this one all the way around and then meet you guys back here kind of periodically to talk about what I'm learning. Okay, so as I come into the most extreme part of the curve, this 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 that I've been doing is not enough. I'm going to be falling behind, so I am just going to alternate between the 3 and the 4, and here on the tip of the curve I may do like 3 or 4 repetitions of just 4 back to back, just again to keep that. I'm going to show my nerd colors here, but in marching band, whenever we would practice turning, like, you know, for doing like a windmill or something, and the person in the center and then the person on the edge, for them to stay in line with each other, the person in the center had to go very, very slow, and the person on the end had to like run. Much my little stubby legs, I was always the one on the end. But and so this is the same thing that we're doing here. So as we get into the fullness of the curve, we're going to need to travel a little bit faster, and it doesn't seem like much, but the width of this wire clearly adds up. So that's why we're going to go a little faster there on the edge. Okay, so another tip here as we get into the widest part, if you feel like you're getting some imperfections in your wire, you could use nylon jaw pliers, but again, I just focus on what I'm doing next and kind of just burnish it with my fingernail, and then kind of weave through, and cinching it around and then pressing with my fingernail as I kind of cinch a little bit more helps me to maintain my tension, which can be very important right now, especially as we start getting up until this point we've been getting wider and wider and wider, and now we're getting down to where it's going to start decreasing back to where our wires are touching each other. And my weaving can sometimes have a tendency to slip towards, you know, it wants to just slide down to the narrowest point instead of building up and stacking on itself to the widest. So the way that I do that is I just focus on one spot at a time, and I bring it around and then cinch it. Also, if I were just doing a 1-beat weave, there's not as much holding on and maintaining the tension. I really prefer, if I can help it, to always do at least a 2-beat weave, because then even if the wire spreads, it's still maintaining its tension, and it's being a little bit more like structural in, you know, if we just did like a loose figure 8 with a single beat, it just doesn't hold its shape and its tightness as much, whereas here on the 2-beat, it seems to be doing all right. So, and again, like that right there how that kind of spreads, that drives me bonkers. But the 2-beat helps it maintain its tension, so we can just scooch it right back into spot. And sometimes I'll actually hold on to my most recent work with my fingernails, or the pads of my fingers, just whatever I can to get it to where I can then with the additional wraps around the core wire secure our most recent location. So also we want to make sure that we're not wrapping over any of our previous work like that, because that can really gum up the whole operation if you can tell what's going on there. We want that wire instead to be, we want them to all be stacked next to each other, not on top of each other, or overlapping rather. So there's 1 and 2. I do hope that that was helpful to you guys. But yeah, and just if it starts creeping around, just smush it on back. That's all right. And then 1. At this point, I have started going back to just doing a 3-beat. I think it helps it to be more gradual. And I think I like that better than doing the 2-3-4, 2-3-4, or 2-4, what we were doing earlier. Oh boy, words are hard. Though I don't know, I'm going to do a 4th one here. So just kind of play it by ear. Unless somebody's looking at your work through a microscope, it's not likely they'll notice. And if they do, they might like it. You know, it's not everything that we as the artisans view as an imperfection is necessarily an imperfection. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and art is subjective, y'all. So, let it be what it is. If there's something that bugs you about a piece, that might be the exact same thing that makes somebody else fall in love with it. So, unless you're making it for yourself and you hate it, in which case follow your heart. But from a market perspective, sometimes pieces that I'm like, it's just not doing it for me, somebody else fell in love with and they were like, oh my god, this is perfect, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Or maybe they'll see it and it'll make them think of somebody and they're like, oh my god, so and so will love this. So I can often get in my own way as far as designing goes because I'm so limited by my tastes and preferences. So sometimes I like to do something completely out of my regular zone of what I like, just to flex and exercise some muscles that I don't typically use. Okay, so that's still coming around. Now, also, I am going to be using this tutorial as a video foundation for multiple other projects using this as the base. So, if you are here watching this video from one of those other videos that at the time of recording I haven't shot yet, so hello, future people. Maybe. I hope the future still exists. Oh boy. It's like, how's it going? Let me know down in the comments how it is in the future, you guys. Is there still toilet paper? Sorry, no, I'm not going to get into stuff. Okay, there. And now, again, I'm having trouble. Oh, well, that's very upsetting. I just lost a segment because I was talking to my phone while it wasn't recording. But things were, gosh, and it was right as it was getting tricky, too. What was I saying? Now, as we come through and go on the decrease here, this is where instead, if I pull on it, it slides like that. So I'm bringing our wire down, holding it with my finger, and then, because I'm kind of close to the end of my working wire anyways, so I loop it around. I'm holding it in place, and then pushing that wire through, and then pulling it through, and then smushing it down. And then we can do our little one, and even then he likes to the wire likes to slip. So there's 1 and 2. Then feeding this wire through. Just do kind of whatever you need to do, you guys, to get where you're going. So, and I'm still maintaining that 2-3 beat for the expansion. Though I think this might be my last time doing the 3 beat. Just so that they can start being a little bit more parallel to each other. Though I'll gauge that here in a sec after we've, like, I try to never, planning is essential, but plans are useless. So I try to kind of plan, but I will scrap that plan immediately. Like right there, my wire's a little lumpy and weird. So let's see if we are able to tighten down. Nope, so I'm actually going to have to unweave a little. There we go. Just enough to where I can cinch that in. Give it a good smush, or a bad smush. It's up to you. Artist's discretion. And so now just coming around. This one. Oops, didn't mean to bump the tripod. I know that can be very jarring, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. There's... Yes, I'm still doing the 2 beat, like the 2-3. So there's those 2. Okay, so now from here, I'm gonna try to do just a 2 beat, but things are getting pretty snug, what with everything. So I'm actually going to take this and open up the bail wire just a little bit more, because that should allow me to get in there and do the weaving all the way down. So there's 1 and 2. 1. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go out of frame. Oof, oh, this is so tricky. Okay. What am I doing? Okay. So we've got our 1, 2. And now I'm going to bring this around to the back. Because I actually think I may start doing, yep, here I am going to start doing a 1 beat. Where I just weave once around each, because it lets me get it kind of loose and then cinch it down into place just like that. So now I'm going to come around through, again making sure my wires are not laying on, like crossing over each other. I want them sitting just side by side. There's around that one, and then again it's kind of loose and weird, so I just smush it. Checking in from that angle, then hooking around. So you can see I'm almost just hooking the wire around where it's convenient, making sure it's lined up correctly, and then smushing. So hopefully that'll work. So again, let's check from the back side here, make sure, yeah, that wire's sat where it's supposed to be. And then hooking around, and then pushing through, and then smush. So that's all right, I do believe. Now I'm going to leave this one at, that is 4 or 5 repetitions. of this, I'm going to leave this side here where it is at, and then I'm going to complete this side, and I'm going to do that in time lapse. So I'll meet you guys right back here when we get kind of finishing up this side. So I noticed somebody tugging on the end of my wire, and so I had a helper for a little bit, but after that I noticed, and this is in no way the cat's fault, it's all my own doing, well, I'm a loppy and weird. I have got mismatched humps. So we could leave it like that and have it be like an organic heart, but symmetry is harder for sure. So let's try to go that route, which involves pulling out stitches. So I'm going to open this up just a hair to make it hopefully a little easier to undo the hard work we have done. I'm gonna get that wire out of our way. And I'm just gonna, this is exactly what I feared happening as far as like the wire clarity goes, because now we no longer have perfectly smooth wire. It's all kind of bumpy and weird, but that's fine. But it did not even occur to me that if I keep my standard death grip on the wire, that it's gonna get kind of boogered up. So I am also going to try to troubleshoot if your wire breaks, mostly because it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot easier to try to splice in wire than to try to straighten this wire out. And our wire may be breaking anyhow. Just from, this is a lot of little kinks and stuff in the wire to try to straighten out, and so it'll get work hardened. But we can troubleshoot it. That's okay. Okay, so I'm going to try to remove the wire up into the point where they were last symmetrical, which I feel like is like back here. I just feel like this curve collapsed and this spiral pulled up more. Again, having a drawing on like graph paper or something would be a great way to be able to really pinpoint where you deviated off of course, and also would be a good way of just, checking in with yourself as you're weaving to avoid this situation altogether. Most of creating is not, I have found, just following the plan. It is being like, ooh, this isn't what I planned, but this is what's happening. And so instead of fretting, because that can be my natural impulse sometimes, is to be like, dang it, and to get upset. And instead of going that route, which I feel like stifles creativity, go the route of, ooh, well, what do we do now? Kind of roll with the punches, ride the tide kind of stuff, and go with the flow and see where it takes you. Because oftentimes my most enjoyable work, and also often what's been received as some of my most beautiful work, has happened, like the fan favorites are what happen as a result of things going very sideways. So Let's not be hard on ourselves. Let's just embrace it and go with it. So to fix that curve, I'm going to squeeze this down just a little bit to open up that gap. And then I'm pulling this out and then bending it back in to get that curve to beef back up, like kind of fluff it a bit. And then as we come home to the tip of the heart, we'll bend that in together. And okay. Yeah, that is much more maybe what I was going for. Now that's up too much. Yeah, that's a lot better. Or exactly the same. I can't tell. So from here, how would we splice in? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue around. I want to try to bind off my wire as much as possible. So if your wire broke, unweave enough that you have enough wire to do like 10 rotations around. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And that's going to bind off your previous weaving wire. Oh, I hate doing this because normally I avoid having to splice in at all costs because it is tricky. Oh, but I cut it. Okay, so we will smush that loose end. I try to cut it to where it'll be like on the top edge of our wire. That way it won't catch on the back and it won't catch on the front. And now we are going to go through, and, oh no, I lost my wire. Where'd it go? Okay, there it is. And remove all of this crunchy bit until we get to fresh wire. So put that into the scrap pile. And now from here, we will lay our wire down as though it were continuing the weave. So I'm just doing a little bit of a tail. And that's going to be hooked around there. So there's one. And I'm actually finding it's a little bit easier to just wrap 3. I'm going to do 4 times. This is actually an optimal place for our wire to be breaking because it can be, excuse me, during an expansion, which gives us a little bit more wire to hold on to. So again, I'm just kind of getting in here. Excuse me. And we're going to smush that down in line with the other stuff. I'm going to try to bring this wire all the way around to where it nestles on the back. But I don't want it to blend in too well because I don't want to risk snipping the wrong bit. So you can kind of see what's happening here maybe. I'm going to scooch it down. So we have these 4 wraps with that little bit of tail wire. I'm going to smush, or I'm going to snip actually, our tail wire. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to smush it so that there's no little pokey bits. So we have that wrapped on. And I'm going to push it down so that it's in line and very gently. Did I do that backwards? Maybe. I don't know. No? Okay. Because the wire, you can tell on the last weave, went like it was going behind. And so now we're going to come and have the wire like it's coming from up above. And I'm just going to splice it. Now this does give us a really big gap right there. So what we should have done was build the coils off to the other side. would have worked. Okay, in which case we have figured that out. So I'm just going to tug on it, and you can see how easily that undid the work we just did. Oof. Okay, so we're going to come in and do the wire so that the coils are coming off the other side. And we want this to where it's going to look like our wire is coming in from above, just to follow with the weaving pattern. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we will snip that, smush it, okay, so we have those 4, and now we want to bring, so if you can see, we have those 4 wraps, the wire is traveling from behind the piece towards us, and so now I'm going to thread it following that same figure 8 pattern and bring it to where it joins up without crossing over. There we go. Through on the coil. Now for this segment only, we're actually going to be doing a single beat. Excuse me. We're going to be doing a single beat weave, but that's because we're going to be nestled in between these other coils. So we've got it around there the once. I'm holding it because I don't want to pull too much pressure. And I'm bringing that around so that we can then come up on this side where we already have those 4. So I'm just going to come down and through, continuing that single beat figure 8, because I just want the wires spaced correctly, because again, unless somebody's looking at your work from under a microscope, they're not going to realize. Okay, coming around, just finagly, there we go. And so now from here we will continue like nothing ever happened. So we've brought it around. We're going to do I forgot how to wire wrap. Oh no. Nervous chuckling intensifies. So there's 1. Okay, there we go. And 2. Now you're going to have to be really careful because this is going to keep wanting to split for the rest of ever until you finish the piece. So you're going to have to babysit that spot and make sure that it's not getting too much space between the old and the new. So 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and do a 4. And then we can come in here. I'm actually just going to grab that and pull it through. Seems a little bit easier to me right now. And I'm hooking on this back side. You can see how that wire will just nestle in with the other coils. So we don't want it sitting on top. We want it to nestle in. And that can be a little tricky, but you can get it. Lots and lots of practice, y'all. Okay, so coming around, let's do that figure 8 again. And again, if your wire's not straight, just burnish it with your fingernail and that'll take care of it. So there's 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm finding myself with like a death grip, so I'm trying to take a deep breath, relax, let it be. Okay. So now from here, we're gonna pick a spot and cinch it in. There we go. And again, treating it on this side like it's just a 1-beat weave, because until we burn through that wire that's been laid down to splice in, it still makes it look like we're doing those multiple weaves, but we're not. So, but up here on the outside, we are. 2, 3, 4, coming around. Just like that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, trying to make sure that I'm not death gripping it, but at this point, I feel like it's going to be what it's going to be. If it doesn't come out perfect, that's just how it is this time, is how I'm feeling about it. Again, I'm gripping a little too tightly that it collapsed the curve. It's a little less than perfect on this side compared to the other. That's okay. Okay, so now we're going to come around, get tangled in our own wire, push this through. Oops. And I'm just skipping 1 wire in between each. So you can see that's kind of giving it, keeping that pattern going. One, 2, 3, and 4. And coming around, nestling that in, checking for consistency. And if you hear popping, that's just my wrists. 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I think we're at the point now I can put it back into time lapse. Oh, nope, we're here at the last part. I'd hate to show you everything and then not the end, so okay, so we've spliced in there. We're gonna do the four more rotations. 2, 3, 4. And now from here, I'm gonna hook that last, sorry, I didn't mean to be out of frame. There's always somebody who yells at me in the comments and it's like, okay, thanks. Thank you for your contribution. we're just going to come in and nestle in between those last two. And one. Whoops, and it's also getting super slidey. So I'm going to hold it with my fingernail as we come round and hook round. So there's 2, 3, and I think I'm going to be happy with just 3 right there. And now again we hook around but resume our 2 beat. So there's 1 and 2. So now I shall continue in time lapse, just like how we were. Okay, so we are back at the point where it looks like we can do one more 2 beat, and then we're going to start doing the 1 beat to join off our sections. So I am going to come around and here on the back side, just trying to not have my fingers in the way. There we are. Just open up that back wire just a bit, just so that we can get our wire in there. See how we kind of splayed that out? So now let's do, because we want to make sure that we're not stacking over our previous coils, our previous wraps. So there's 1, 2, and then 1, 2, and now we're going to do the 1 beat. And we'll do that by coming up in between. Oops, bumping the tripod. Totally highly necessary step of the procedure. Coming through here. I actually like to use my fingernail as like a slide. I hook my fingernail over the pre-existing weaving, and that way as the wire slides down my fingernail, it just nestles in next to it instead of risking layering over top. So there's 1. I'm going to use that fingernail as a slide. There we go. 2. Coming up and through. And it gets more and more difficult for me, I find, to bypass our previous weaving. So there's 3. Okay. And this becomes 4. So something that can help too is kind of pushing the wire up and then pulling it down. Just anything, whatever you got to do to get them to behave. And now on to our 5th and last for making this stuff match. Oh, and that one just nestled in perfectly. Look at that. Who'd have thought? Okay, so now from here, we could go out of frame, add a bead into the center. We could continue down the side of our spirals and bind the wire off that way. I'm going to see if we can't use this wire to make our bail. So I'm going to flip around to the back side here so that we can see better what's going on. And I'm going to use one of the wires. I'm checking the condition, running my hand along the length of the wires to see if one is longer than the other. This one is longer, and it feels like it's in slightly better shape. So I'm going to use this wire to travel towards the bottom, which to do that, I am just going to go like this, wrapping around just those two, cinch, cinch, cinch. And I am going to figure 8 weave this. Whoa, maybe. Oh, I'm getting snaggled on everything. The projects like this can be a feat of endurance too. So if you find yourself needing to just like take a break and walk away, do that. That's okay. So I am single beat figure 8 weaving these 2 center pieces. Because I think I can at least get like 5. Wraps maybe. And I'm just using my fingernail to kind of encourage the wire up and over and around. So there's 4 beats on each side. I'm going to do one more because, again, 5's just a nice round number. And now from here, I'm going to take this wire and try to, maybe we didn't close them up too well and it won't be impossible to thread this wire through. Or maybe we did too good of a job. Drat. And the wire won't go through at all. Drat, drat, drat. Okay. So we can't thread it through both, but I may be able to thread our wire to bind it off through just this one. Or we can just backtrack up. Making sure to cross over on the back side. No, that's not working either. What am I gonna do? My plan failed. Ruh-roh. Okay, maybe if I use a T-pen. Because, like, I thought I could at least see a little daylight between the wires. There is not even any daylight. I smushed those guys so good. Like, that is the best smushing I've done all day. So, ooh, I just had an idea. Okay, so I'm going to bring the wire up through the center line. And I'm going to split these guys this away. And I'm going to go like once. Twice. And maybe thrice? I don't know, we can always undo it. Yeah, I liked it with just the 2. So we've wrapped twice there, just through the middle, around the figure 8s that we had done. And from here, I am going to, it's hidden on the back, so it'll be okay. Again, bend our bail off a little bit and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps around one of the bail wires, and then give it a snip kind of there on the inside so that there's very little chance of it ever coming into contact with skin or clothing. Just the more hidden I can keep my loose ends, the better. But that's just my own preference. I've had pieces where I'm far less picky about the loose ends that hold up just fine. Okay. So now also this is something that we can come in with like just a flat part of our pliers and make those guys line up a little better. And we'll come in and try to make those spirals. Gosh, it looks so lopsided. So let's focus on the bail. And for the bail, we can come around, and I'm just going to do 1, 2, and then a figure 8 twice. And then 1, 2, and then instead of doing a figure 8 twice, I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, because that seems to work just as well. Actually, a little better. I like it. Then wrap 1, 2. Then 1, 2, 1, 2. Then coming from 1, 2. So I'm trying to make it to where it looks the same from both sides. So 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's not really working. So I had this figured out in another tutorial and it has evaded me. So yeah, but whatever you decide, as long as you're consistent with it, in which case going like, so we have our 2 wraps. There's 1, 2, and then doing a figure 8, followed by a single beat figure 8 again. Gets me pretty good results with them looking similar on the front and back. Boop, boop. Figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop. Figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop. This actually comes out quite nice. I like it. But yeah, you can see once we got into the groove of it and stopped changing it up every couple of stitches, that really gives us a little bit more consistency on the front and back. So continuing, being careful to not layer our wire over itself, just next to itself. So there's figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop, smush. Figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop, smush. And we are going to continue this until we have, I'm going to bring it out to like 1/4 of an inch to the end of our wire, and I am going to go ahead and snip both of these. Woo! Oh gosh. Off to this, like snip them to the same length. And that was a figure 8. So where did I leave off? Yeah. Figure 8. Yeah. Boop, boop, smush. Figure 8. I'm going to have mercy on myself and just do a little bit of a split. Let's zoom in, see if that helps. Figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop, smush. Figure 8, figure 8, boop, boop, smush. And that gets a really nice, tidy result. The figure eights give it a nice woven look while maintaining tension, and the boop 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 boops, just the two around or one around that one, ladder stitch, I guess. Because it kind of looks like a ladder, right? I don't know. I'm sure there's already a name for it. Figure eight, figure eight, boop boop, smush. Oh, and I crossed over myself there when I shouldn't have. So we'll just boop, boop, redo our boops and smush. Oh, there we go. That's much better. Figure eight, figure, uh-oh, our wire's getting short. Okay, well that definitely calls for wrapping it up. We're gonna finish off with a boop, boop, and a smush, and then I'm just gonna go like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's getting too short for me to hold on to, so I'm gonna use my pliers. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoops, broke my wire. That's fine. 9. You know what? 9's plenty good. Bringing it around, snipping it so that it ends kind of in the middle. I'm going to split these temporarily, just so I have enough room to actually get my bent nose pliers in there and smush that down. And now I'm going to bring those guys back together. Give it a bit of a smush, smush, smush. I'm going to bend this forward. And now you could use a pen or a mandrel or a knitting needle. I'm going to use my mandrel pliers on my 8mm section. And I'm actually going to start on my smallest section. And I'm going to make a little loop just so that I don't have weird loose pokey ends. And now I'm going to grasp this around my 8mm section and start bending around. And then I'm going to do this around the smallest part of the tip. You can kind of see I have my pliers in there like that. And even though this makes quite a diminutive bail, it is still plenty large for, oops, any chain or cord that I may want to put through. Whoa, no. This wire can be quite sturdy, the 16 gauge. Okay, so I'm just bending this a bit to get that bail straightened. Oh, I really boogered it up. That's fine, we can make this work. And you don't want to squeeze too hard, because do you see how me squeezing kind of separated our weaving? That's okay. I can just come in with my fingernail and recompress everything and kind of shake a chicken and hope it looks fine. Like shake a chicken for good luck. So I made it a little weird on the bail. That's okay. I don't know what happened there, but we figured it out. And sometimes you just need to open it back up just a little bit to get everything tidied away. And then I'm going to grab it there. Yeah. And bring it back on down. So from here, well, no, that's not, I mean, it's lopsided as all get out. That's okay. So let's see if we can't at least make those sides a little symmetrical. I'm going to trim just a hair off again. Don't know if that's actually going to accomplish anything productive, but we shall see. So there's that, and I'm going to, right now it's quite flat. For the finishing touch, I'm just going to bend our center wire, like our center heart, towards the front. And so here you can see I'm just pushing, kind of pushing through. I think that gives such a nice bit of dimension. Kind of redistributes any uneven weaving I've done as well. And that's a heart. Y'all, we did it. I feel like it took like 30 years, but we did it. We made jewelry. Oh, this one I had a lot more trouble with than previous pieces, but I also would like to be able to cling to the excuse of the heater's not on, so my hands are very cold. I didn't take any breaks, whereas I did on the other pieces. So again, be merciful on yourself and be patient. This is a nice little wonky heart. I like them. So we do, at the time of recording, have these two up for sale on our website, backtooearthcreations@yahoo.com. No, that's our email. Our website is backtooearthcreations.com. All the links and everything are down in the video description, you guys. But we do sell our artwork as well. It's a great way for if you enjoy our channel and our free tutorials to show your support and get something shiny in exchange. So yeah. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me during this video. I really hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. If you enjoy our free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in our exclusive live streams, behind the scenes content, digital download stuff, craft along kits, all that stuff, please consider joining us over on our Craft Along Club. Links for everything are down in the video description below, and for as little as $1 a month or $12 a year, you really help kind of keep the gears cranking, or choo choo, I don't know, like you keep everything moving here, and we really appreciate you. And like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I've brain farted and I don't know what else to say, so thank you for watching, and until next time, happy crafting. Bye.